A reading from the Gospel of Matthew. Jesus said, "For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with the laborers for the usual daily wage, he sent them into his vineyard. When he went out about 9 o'clock, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace, and he said to them, 'You also go into the vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right.' So they went. When he went out again around noon and 3 o'clock, he did the same. And about 5 o'clock he went out and found others standing around, and he said to them, 'Why are you standing here idle all day?' They said to him, 'Because no one has hired us.' And he said to them, 'You also go into the vineyard.' When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his manager, 'Call the laborers and give them their pay, beginning with the last and then going to the first.' When those hired about 5 o'clock came, each of them received the usual daily wage. Now, when the first came, they thought they would receive more, but each of them also received the usual daily wage. And when they received it, they grumbled against the landowner, saying, 'These last worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us who have borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat.' But he replied to one of them, 'Friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for the usual daily wage? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give to this last the same as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Or are you envious because I'm generous?' So the last will be first, and the first will be last." Jesus coming back with that teaching point that he returns to time and again in the Gospels. The first will be last, and the last will be first. A couple of things. In this parable, Amy Jill Levine, a Jewish New Testament scholar, says that it's important to know that in the Jewish thought world, the scandal or the problem in this story would not be that the landowner, that the vineyard owner chose to pay a full day's wage to someone who had only worked a partial day. That, in fact, was a normal practice. And the day laborers coming in, and this was just very much the norm in the work life of the Jewish community, especially in these agricultural centers. Excuse me. And the scandal in the story is not that the person who worked less than a full day would get a full day's wage. That was not uncommon. And it was part of the communal sense of caring for one another and distributing to the broader community. Those in need could come and work as much as they could and receive a day's wage. That wasn't the scandal. The scandal to the hearer in Jesus' listening would be that the people who had worked longer expected more, that they had expected some sort of special, gold star on their forehead or more money in their pocket or a higher status for having done more work, that was actually not a part of the ethic of the community. And that was what the problematizing was in this story. This whole story reminds me of a modern day sort of rebuke that I received in my early 20s when I had been the closest relative to my then grandmother, who was in her 80s. And I was the only one who lived in the same city as her. And so my 3 brothers and I had a close relationship with my grandmother, but towards the end of her life, I was one of the people who would visit her often, take and have lunch with her. I would take her to her doctor's appointments and all these things. And so I spent a lot of time with her. I brought my oldest child along, my only child at the time. And she had all kinds of times with Grandy Books Hackney, as she was called, because she loved books. And so I spent a lot of time tending to and loving on my grandmother. And when she died rather suddenly of a heart attack in her late 80s, we were all in shock, and it came time to distribute her very modest possessions. Many of them were books and figurines and things like that. And I was shocked when my mother suggested, at the sort of division of the things that was taking place, she suggested that we all go around and take equal turns. Why doesn't each one of you select an item? And I, of course, was not going to object to that outwardly, but inwardly I was less than pleased that I, the person who had been at her side and spent all the time and taken her to lunches and done all the work of helping to make my grandmother's last years happy and meaningful, there was a part of me that felt it just wasn't right. There was this equal treatment between me and my brothers who had done so much less than I had done. And my mother, in her wisdom, said, your reward is that you got to spend more time with your grandmother. And in fact, with that correction in my thinking, I saw that she was right. But I'm very in tune with the sense that we can get that our actions should somehow set us apart from others, and not seeing the whole picture. As I have said before, my understanding of parables is that they are little stories that are meant to make us think and to make us question our own assumptions, and to invite us to engage in what God is trying to tell us, what Jesus is trying to teach us through parables, pointing us to some deeper truth, some surprising truth that might invite us into a deeper relationship with God, into a truer relationship with God through Jesus, a truer relationship with ourselves. So I hope you'll take this parable of the laborers in the vineyard and see what it brings up for you, especially in these complicated times where, frankly, going for a day of work might in fact be the privilege that one has, is that you get to work. There are all kinds of interesting twists and turns in our lives right now, and Jesus's parables, as always, invite us to engage with the deeper meaning of the parable and the deeper meaning of our lives. May God be with you this day and bless you this day and always. Amen.